Hello and welcome to my next video tutorial. Today I'm going to finally present to you in practice how I'm painting the red colors on Uther. As you can see, most of the bust is now painted and prepared. And elements like his head and his sword are not glued. I was holding them just to present you the miniature. Okay. So today I'm going to focus on painting this part of the arm in order to present to you in practice how to do it. I hope it will work, but red is very problematic color for the cameras, especially my very saturated red is hard to record. But we will see how it will work. I hope that because this element is really big, my camera will manage to work on that. Okay, so now you can see on the picture, on the reference photo, where the light's supposed to be reflecting on this part of the armor. And I'm going to follow this reflection, but then I will have to also improvise a little, like with the fact that this element got broken and I was looking for it everywhere and it's gone. So I will have to simply try to ignore it and paint over it, and reimagine some reflections in areas like here. But we will see in a moment how it will work. Let's start with cleaning the surface with brush cleaner and an ear pick. It is a very delicate work that requires from me just gently. I need to simply gently touch the surface with the ear pick. I need to roll over it. It's important to don't push the ear pick and try to avoid pushing it through the surface, because then you can leave particles of cotton on it. Sometimes it's impossible, so it's the best to simply roll over it. The cleaner is not only cleaning the surface, but it's also making it softer, and when it's softer, it's easier to apply paint on it. Okay, so let's start with the basics. So first, white paint. Of course, you can use any kind of white paint. I am using polycolor because I was really unhappy with my Vallejo game color paint and I couldn't buy model color anywhere. If I have choice, I use game color. I use model color. Okay, so now let's dilute this paint because it's, as you can see, the consistency is different than on our standard miniature paints. But you just add more water and it's okay. Okay, let me remind myself how the photo really looks like, because I obviously do not have it in front of myself. Okay, so these bottom parts. Okay, so right now I'm using Uther Series 7 size 1 brush, size 2 brush, because for bigger surfaces you really need bigger brushes. Nah. Okay, alright. Remember that the reference photo is just a reference. It's really good to have one, but following it what one is not exactly necessary. It's supposed to help you, do not chain you to following it. So when you will use it, just be cool with it. Painting light coming from below is a bit problematic because later when I will make photos of the finished bust, there will be a natural shade over there. So it will be much darker than it's supposed to be. But it's important to make it anyway. And now because this is cut off, broken, and I have edge like this, I need to paint it as well because the light would reflect on it. In the end, when it will be all painted, nobody will really pay attention to the fact that it's broken. Okay. At this moment, let's leave it like this. Okay. Okay, now of course I need to apply my layers. Now, and you can see how the paint is acting like in here. I obviously did poor job with my cleaner because if I would do it in the right way, this would never happen. Look, now I moved cleaner over here, over this detail, and now it will act completely different. Look, much better. Okay, the second layer. I think I will have to apply at least 3 layers. I think 3 layers will be alright. Okay, so I will apply now one more layer and make the shapes better. And I will make it off the camera to save some time. So see you in a moment. Okay, so I applied way more layers than I said, at least 5. I mean in total. But it's very important to have a nice solid layer to work with. Okay, and now I'm going to use deep yellow from Polycolor as well. So far it's the best yellow that I found, but you can use of course any other brand. I was simply really unhappy with all the companies that I know. None of them had nice yellow. All of them had very small amount of pigment in them, so they didn't work nice. Sorry. Okay, so of course this paint I need to dilute as well. And yeah, you can see how great the yellow looks like on white base color, especially when it's surrounded by black. At this moment, I don't have to be precise. It can be very messy because I'm going to fix it later with dark red colors. That are going to be used in painting the rest of this armor. So okay, it's as you can see, it's very wet, so I need to give it a moment to dry down. Okay, so now I applied another layer of yellow paint. So this is how it looks like now. And now, of course, I'm going to simply paint more with vermilion paint. If you have red paint set from Andrea, then it's the same color under the name of the third light. But well, I'm using this one because I was looking for some alternative from Andrea red color paint set because I know it's hard to get. So yeah, you can also use go to your local art shop and ask simply about vermilion acrylic paints and ask for some good company. I did that and this is how I got this. I'm really happy with this vermilion. It's, I guess, the brightest color of red that there is. Yeah. Maybe some miniature company has this color as well, but I didn't see it. So, I don't know. Okay, dust, of course. Okay, so now, well, I'm doing the same thing. It's time to cover this yellow area with vermilion. But when it comes to vermilion, I think I will apply at least 3 layers. Because now I need to have a very nice solid red layer. I cannot have any parts of yellow being visible underneath it. Okay, so now I will simply apply more layers in order to create the solid red base, and see you in a moment. Okay, so this is how it looks like after applying 3 layers. As you can see, it's orangey red, very saturated color. Like I said, it's hard to represent it on the video because, well, red is hard to represent in general, and vermilion is crazy hard. Okay, so but when I have this reflection, that's okay, but this whole area is soaked in red color, in red light, so I cannot leave other parts gray, for example. Here is the one difference when there was really strong light coming from here to this part. So yeah, so it's different here, but the rest will be simply in the red area. I cannot just leave it like this, so I need to paint more reflections. And now I'm not going to follow any reference photo because it's simply not possible. I will try to simply create a nice contrastful atmosphere in here. Well, as you know, when I'm painting non-metallics, I'm painting with brighter color over darker one, but with the red, the story goes differently because red needs to be saturated. At least I want it to be saturated. So then I have to go otherwise, in completely opposite direction. I need to make it darker and darker on the edges. So this will work a bit different, in a bit different way. Okay, so I will keep new reflections in here. These reflections will be much darker. They will be painted with basic red. And now I will make off the camera all these steps that I just presented you here because you already know how to do them. So see you in a moment. Okay, so this is how it looks like now after I painted the other side with vermilion as well. If you can use a hairdryer, you should definitely use it for these steps because, as you could see, that was very time consuming and, well, boring as well. But now, okay, so this is the brightest part that I need. So this is going to be, of course, in this red light area, but it has to be a bit darker because it's not illuminated directly by this source of red light. So for that, I need finally to use base red paint. It's the most basic red that there is in red paint set, and it looks like most of normal red paints that you can buy from any company. So yeah, just use normal red that you have. It's not really necessary to use this one. Everything will work just fine. Okay, so once again, I simply need to take it and now paint these whole areas with this color. As you can see, I still don't have to be precise at all. Okay, so it looks like that. And now the hairdryer. Sorry for the noise, but look how quick, how quickly it is going to dry out now. Yeah, that's why hair dryer is something that you really need for big areas. One more layer, but in the end I think that I will apply 3. As you can see, the darker the red becomes, the better camera works with it. Vermilion is really killer for it, for its matrix. Really hard to represent. Maybe that's why most of the painters are making some kind of a pinkish red instead of really red. But well, I really want it to be red, like juicy saturated red. Okay, so I will make more layers of red of the camera because it might be 2 layers, 3 layers, something like this. I will let you know. Okay, so I made 2 more layers and well, I think I will leave it like this. It's barely visible anyway. So now that I already have this base red on my palette, I need to start making layers because that's what I do. Okay, so I obviously need to paint the edges of these red areas. And it's very important to have nice comfortable position. And base red is going to leave very visible marks on this vermilion layer. And I need to paint this layer really over the vermilion because in other way it won't be visible at all. Next layers can be placed somewhere else, but these have to be because the base red itself is not strong enough to cover black base color. That's also why I made this vermilion area so big. Okay, now the other places. Of course, just like with other details, it's good to apply more thin layers to at least try to avoid creating structure on the surface. Okay, now it's time for the next color. And the color is the first shadow. And you can easily make it by simply adding a bit of black paint to your base red color. Remember that only mixing base red with black works. If you add black to vermilion, it will look really bad. So yep. Vermilion is absolutely unique color. You cannot also achieve it by adding just simply yellow to red. It won't happen. You simply need vermilion. And I obviously need to make another layer. But this time I can finally use this color on the edges of these all areas. I hope that when all of this will become a bit darker, my camera will start working better with it. Now there's this part, and this part needs to be painted a bit differently. I need to paint now shadow casted by this part of the armor, so we need to make it this shadow in this sharp way. see, to imitate that there is light and there is an object on its way. Okay, I will fix these layers in a moment, but now let's go to the darkest color, which is of course the second shadow that you can easily make once again by simply adding even more black to your mixture. And this is the basic color for this area. I'm going to use it as the darkest part for the darkest areas. Okay, so that was the most boring part of the job. Now I can finally go and create transitions between colors, and this is so much better. Of course, it would be perfect if you could use bigger scale brush, just like the one I'm using right now. Okay. Okay, so in that case, first I take base red. Base red paint. I try to create good tip on my brush. It's not good. Maybe this will be enough. Okay, this is too much. Okay. Okay, so I simply have now base red on the tip of my brush. And like I said, It would be perfect to use bigger size of a brush, but I will probably have to switch to smaller. And I'm gently painting tiny scratches. Nah, I need smaller brush. Unfortunately, this will take longer, but I have better precision. Okay, so I'm painting tiny scratches with base red over the... It's so hard to get good brush these days. Okay, another. It looks like all of my brushes are bad these days. Why I cannot have one with good tip? Okay, so back to this, what I tried to explain. Okay. Tiny scratches over the surface. You can also try to paint with brighter color over darker, but in that case, first of all, you will achieve much paler color. And my goal is to create saturated color. And the process will be even longer than it is now. Sometimes I have no other choice. I have to paint with brighter red over darker area, but I really don't like it because it's really time consuming. Forgive me, but I won't make it as smooth as I usually do, but because of two things. You know that like 70% of my work is blending. That's what is taking me so much time. And the other thing is that I'm pretty sure that on the video you won't be able to see the difference. I know that the way how I present it is not perfect. It's not as good as I would like to record it either, but I'm pretty sure that nobody has better videos about painting saturated red because, well, my camera is pretty good and it still cannot work with it as well as I would like to. So I hope you will still enjoy this video. I'm trying to make it as well as I can. But it's also a bit frustrating that my hard work is barely visible. That's why when it comes to red, I prefer to make PDF tutorials. And it's, and when you are painting, it's good to have tip in this side. Because now I'm painting not exactly with the tip, but with the side of the tip of the brush. And it gives me much smoother transition. The stripes I'm painting right now are more blurry. Now let's take the first shadow and let's see what we can do with it. But it's very dark color, comparing to base red, of course. So I need to be very careful with it. The more delicate work, the smaller stripes I'm trying to create. With this base red, I could be a bit less careful, but now it's really dangerous. And like I said, it's very important to use side of the tip of the brush if you only can. You can also dilute the paint more. Then it, of course, will take more time to paint this, but it will look be more. It will be easier to make it smoother, but will take more time. At this point, you can even try simply glazing. All in all, if you want to have really saturated color, you have to paint with darker over brighter one. In this way, color gets richer, looks better. Yep, this is the way. Okay, I will go back for base red for a moment. I want to have bigger spectrum of color, not a sudden transition like on non-metallics. So I will paint a bit more with this base red. Okay, sometimes you simply need to change the position of the miniature, because like I said many times, the most important thing is to have comfortable grip. Now once again, second shadow. As you can see, now I'm painting with different position of my paintbrush. Now I really feel like I'm simply creating stripes, but I cannot hold it in any other way. And now, of course, the second shadow. Okay, phew. So that's the technique that I use. So now for a moment I won't say much because I won't have to say much. I won't have much to tell. So yeah, so from now on it's going to be a process of painting and blending. Well, somehow it doesn't look good. Yeah. It's crazy. All of my paintbrushes are bad right now. I mean, I feel like the more and more often when I buy a brush, it doesn't have good enough tip for painting. And without good brush, painting is not very nice and pleasant work. Oh my god, my camera is going crazy with these colors. Okay, this is how it looks like here. Okay, so here is base red. I hope it's going to be easier to work with it because it's much darker. So of course I start with first shadow. And I need to be very gentle because first and second shadow are really strong colors that can cover pretty quickly, so it's important to dilute it enough. Come down and paint a lot of tiny stripes. It would be perfect if you could make a stripe that would start here and end here. But for me, it's not the most comfortable move. So I won't do it like this. But just so you know, maybe you can do it better than I do. Very often when you change the position, you can see different details and problems that you couldn't see on your the first time when you're painting, like now. Because I changed the position of the whole model, I can see more details that I didn't see earlier, and I can fix them. Okay, once again, change of perspective, and it looks a bit different to me. And it's obviously easier to get some details. That were unreachable on the previous position. Okay, now I need to work on these edges. Now here's the detail that goes through the hole that you can see in here. Of course, we need it to work in similar way. So now I'm gently painting on the sides of it with base red. Now is that the light is illuminating the miniature from the bottom, so the reflections should be on this other side, goes on the opposite way than usually. So first let's make them more visible, and then we will paint shadows over them. I need to make them even brighter than the rest of the details, so I need to start with the white paint. Sometimes it's hard to see exactly where the light reflects on the detail. That's why I'm moving it so much. Okay, see. Now because I'm marking this, I want to also have this detail in the middle a bit brighter, so I will highlight it a little bit as well. Okay. Now I can make deeper shadow on these places. Can you see this? And that's supposed to be the tip of the brush. Horrible. So I used base red in here because these areas are obviously the brightest. Now I can very gently use just in a few tactical places first shadow, because here I assume that this band is rather deep. Now of course yellow. in one more place. Okay. So the next stage is done. Now I need to, of course, paint it with vermilion, but the difference now is that I want to really dilute this and gently paint over these yellow places, because then I will have brighter color. Than on the rest of the arm. Okay, back to base red to make a few transitions brighter, smoother. Okay. So now I need to make similar things on this side, of course. Of course, on this side it's going to be much easier to make edges more visible. Okay, so now it's time to blend more details. Okay, so now if this is reflecting the light, here comes the light, then it's being reflected from another object, it comes here. This means that this part is supposed to be brighter and this darker. And here I won't make it darker because this has different shape, so it will look better like this. So now I made a few mistakes here, so I will have to paint with brighter color over darker, so you'll see how much time it takes. Of course, we can do it as well. As well as paint with darker over brighter. It simply will give different effect. But the best effect you will always have when you will combine a few techniques. See, it looks a bit different now. I will blend now a few spaces of the camera in order to save us some time, so see you in a moment. Okay, so this is how it looks like now. As you can see, I blended more of the details, but at this moment the darkest color that I used is the second shadow, and this is something to think about because it is more realistic to keep it this way. But if I would make stronger shadow with black paint, that would look simply more impressive. From the other things, I left this tiny detail unpainted at this moment, just to work a little with my another new brush. Okay. So in that case, because here I have very bright color, vermilion of course, I want to make this part a bit darker. And once again, you can paint it like this. Or you can make the glaze technique, which of course looks like this. When you're working with glazes, it's important to slide the color with the side of your brush. It's a very cool technique that I like, but it simply takes more time because in order to make it the best, you need to apply very thin layers of paint. So you need to dilute it a lot. And blowing on the detail is necessary in order to paint anything in some more serious time. But because this area is supposed to be very bright, I will stick to the base red. But like I said, on places, there are plenty of places that supposed to be simply dark red, but there are also some details that can be painted with black paint in order to make details more visible. And these places are, of course, in the places where the shadow is. I know it sounds a bit like jibber jabber, but by this I mean simply details like this one in here. That's the great things about the video. Even if I don't know how to explain something, at least present it to you. But like you can see, there's problem with recording video about red color. And here are a few scratches on the surface of the armor. Sorry, when you paint something this small, you simply need to stop breathing for a moment. Hold your breath. Okay, now of course I need to work on rivets, but because this is new brush, it doesn't work exactly how I would like it to, so I will take simply a smaller size, in that case size 0. I use it very rarely these days, but for details like this it's very good. That's why it's very important to have these three sizes: 0, 1 and 2. And it's also very important to dilute your paint properly, because if you will have it not diluted in the right way, when you will go and try to paint something, it won't simply make a mark. It's important on this size of brushes especially, because they cannot suck enough of moist into their hair, so you need to have more diluted paint than usually when you're working with them. Okay, now if we'll use black paint here, we'll make this detail way more visible. I can finally see, I can see that this is finally, that this finally looks a bit better on the video. Too bad that every time I change the position of the miniature, it starts to look differently. But well, I guess I cannot do anything about this. I think that simply my camera simply sees at the wrong angle. It sees it as the source of heat or light, and then some automatic processes are getting started. Of course, even such big miniature can be painted with a brush size 1. The only problem is that that would take 100 years to finish. So I'm trying to use such small size only for the really small details. Of course, the rivets are now illuminated from both sides. From the bottom by the direct light, and from the other side as the reflection of the light that reflects from other objects. So it's important to highlight them from all sides. And now, of course, I need to also highlight the scratches. And they're a bit problematic, but because they are also illuminated from both sides. But because we see this model in this position, I will highlight them only from one side. This bottom, I will highlight only bottom part of this dents and scratches, because it will look more natural. I should, of course, if I would like to make it exactly how it's supposed to be, then I'm supposed to highlight both edges, bottom and the top one. But while in reality it would simply look different. So I think I'll simply illuminate only bottom side, because I feel that although it's not realistic, it will look better. And for this work, it's better to now take the size 1 brush, because it has more hair in it. So it's a bit softer and it can work with bigger surfaces. And in the end, I took now my really old brush, because new ones work really bad. Okay, now of course yellow. Sometimes it's really hard to find the right position for painting and recording. So sorry for all of these movements. Of course, now many of the reflections that I'm placing are not very realistic, but they will simply make the details more visible. I think that such small reflections, like I'm painting right now with yellow paint, can simply make all of this more interesting, because well, many details in reality are simply less impressive, effective than what we are painting. But in the end, what we want to create is not something that is super realistic, because in reality, many colors, details, and contrasts are simply rather flat. And when we are painting, I assume that we are more interested in creating something that looks interesting, simply. So that's why I try to always I try to paint in a realistic way, but in the end, I also make things that are not realistic, but make the model look more interesting. Oh, I didn't see the scratch. As you can see, this yellow can leave mark even on black paint, so it's really nice paint. But first, I highly recommend creating realistic base for the miniature, like this shadows, blendings, light, and then you can simply, in a few places, apply some reflections that will change the feeling of the miniature a bit. Okay, phew, yellow. Yellow is here. Finally. Too bad I have to do all of this now for the third time. Okay, now I will make one thing differently. After all, I will use vermilion on these areas that are dark red, dark. But there, where it's bright and already painted with vermilion, I think I will simply make an orange mixture. All in all, it has to be visible. I think I will have to work a bit with black paint in order to make these scratches deeper again. Some of this black paint has become really not visible. But because this side was painted only with base red, I can use here simply vermilion as the brightest color and it will look good. Because I don't want these scratches to be too visible. I mean, they of course need to be visible, but don't want them to be very different from the color around it. Of course, instead of using orange mixture that I'm going to create soon, you can also simply dilute vermilion very much. Yeah, I guess it's too bright for this place. Okay, so I paint the rest of the scratches of the camera to save us some time. See you in a moment. Okay, so now it's like just a few last things. I need to make shadow on the rivets that is between one reflection and another darker. So first I prepared it with base red, and now I simply make it deeper with first shadow. You can focus only on sides of them if you want to. Okay, but as you can see, we need to have reflection from the both sides. Now I simply need to make a few of the shadows deeper because they started to look differently now. I ruined a bit of the shadows during painting the reflection. Like I said many times, painting is very often going back and forth. And sometimes instead of black I need to use second shadow, like on places like this. And as you can see, that was even too deep. Okay, maybe I can fix it a bit with base red. This scratch is definitely too deep. I didn't want it to be like this. Okay, so now let's use the first shadow on the other scratch. Okay, so now carefully, let's start with base red. When you're painting, you don't want to create too deep scratches. At least not. You need to control it, because when if I would paint now this scratch with black paint, that would represent if that would be cutted through the entire armor, and that is not my intention. Here I have shaded area, so I can make it deeper because it has to be deeper than the light around it. So here I can use black. See, it looks different. Sometimes it's better to don't make to don't use any dark color instead of using too dark. Sometimes it's better to leave some only bright reflection. Okay, so wow, that's more or less what I wanted to present to you today. Yeah, it's not easy to record things like this because, like I said, the camera treats these details as the source of light, so it's a bit problematic sometimes. Okay, let's see how it will look completed with the head and the sword. Well, because of course that's funny how every time I'm using the wrong button. If I want zoom, I always use wrong. Okay. Stay here. Okay. Okay, so see, this is how it looks like now. Of course, the source of light supposed to come from here. I should paint now a few more details on the other side, like on the book, reflections from the red color. But now, with the sword, with his sword in his hand, it looks a bit differently. Better, I assume. Okay, so that was the tutorial about painting the red light on the armor of Uther, and I hope it will be well visible on the video. I will try to do my best in the editing in order to let you see everything, but I hope you enjoyed it anyway. Thank you very much for your support and see you next time. Bye.